Hey everyone, welcome into another episode of the Financially Free Investor podcast. So today is a pretty special episode to me. I'm actually going to take a recording that my wife and I did for her podcast, which if you haven't listened to it, go on, get over there and listen to it. What are you waiting for? It's the Fill Your Cup with Court podcast. And I just thought it would be awesome to have you guys listen in on that conversation. This is going to be a little bit of a bonus episode. So without further ado, here we go.
Welcome to another episode of The Financially Free Investor, where you will learn information and strategies on how to become financially independent by investing in real estate, something that is not taught openly in our society today. Financial freedom matters so you can live a bigger life, retire early, and do what matters most to you. Get ready to hear tried and true methods to becoming financially free with your host, Jordy Clark.
All right, everyone, welcome back into the podcast. I am your host, Courtney Clark, and I have my cute husband.
You can't even say it with a straight face. That's how you know it's not true, people.
You're so cute. Okay, I'm just excited that you're here to do this with me.
Oh, all right.
Not that you have a choice. We're currently on our vision casting, goal setting, dreaming, whatever you want to call it. We're over here dreaming. We're setting intentions, creating that life for ourselves right now. We're in Utah. We're tucked away in a gorgeous little mini canyon in one ship.
Yeah, this is definitely like your style of being in the woods. My style of being in the woods, like I'd have a rifle or a bow. I'd be in a little tent, freezing my butt off, finding elk. But your one's pretty cool too, because we found some elk and we've been warm the whole time. And
yeah, this
is fun.
This is amazing. So this is something that we do, and that's what I want to talk to people about today and how it got started. And I want to just kind of go through like the history of how this has evolved, because this is not what we started with, right? Like our vision casting goal setting retreat did not initially start with a 24-hour plus stay, nor did it involve being in a really incredible deluxe suite.
No. How did it start? What was the first one we did?
Okay, so I remember that we were at a place in our marriage that we both were feeling this urgency to grow, and we didn't really have direction. But you had a coach, Ricky Kane, when you were with Keller Williams, and he said, hey, here's something my wife and I do. We take, and I don't remember if he said it was a day or a weekend, but I just remember that what you had come back to me with was, hey, let's just go away for, like, let's go on a drive, let's go have dinner, and I want us to talk about our goals. So we knew ahead of time, like, we were going to come to this time that we allotted for our marriage prepared to tell each other what our goals were. And I actually still have my goals from that year, all that time ago, because I kept it on my phone. And where it started at was actually in Moab. So I remember we were in Moab, and we actually had Lisa watching the kids for us, and we went for a drive. Well, no, I shouldn't even say the kids. We didn't have the kids. We had Brinley.
Yeah.
We had that kid, our cute Bryn. So we went for a drive, and it was beautiful because we were in Moab, and we just talked about our goals, and then we grabbed dinner that night. And I think we grabbed dinner at that
The Hoodoo?
No, the Hoodoo wasn't even around then. It was up on the mountaintop. It was like the nicest
the Sunset Grill.
The Sunset Grill was the nicest restaurant they had at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at dinner we didn't even talk about the goals and talking about that, and where it started at wasn't even, there was no vision casting, there was no dreaming. It was just, hey, here's my goals, what are yours?
Mm-hmm.
And then we enjoyed a nice drive together.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. It evolved to then I think we did the same thing the following year. The third year we shook it up and we decided like, let's go bigger with this. Let's be more intentional. And what's cool is when you look back and you see where our marriage was the first year we started to year 3 when we were doing this, you went to Jeff and Lynn Marchant and said, hey, can we have your conference room for the night?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And we were there for a while. We did takeout.
Yep.
And we were there for hours.
Yeah.
And we didn't do the poster board thing then.
No.
We just wrote in our notebooks, and we did get our calendars out.
Mm-hmm.
And we got more on the same page.
Yeah. Planned vacations.
Yep.
Yep.
And we were just able to sync up in a different way. But that time was that one really set us up for the next year, because we spent way more time at their conference room. Like, we were there for a while.
Yeah.
I personally remember conversations in those hours we were there. I remember laughing with you. I remember getting a little teary-eyed with you. Kind of having some hard conversations of just like, well, what would that look like? Or, well, this is how this made me feel this year, because we have gone through and we discuss, and I think that was the year that it started, but we discussed like the things that we really loved about the previous year and maybe what we don't want to take with us moving forward. And I don't know if we use that verbiage, but there was definitely a conversation around that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it moved to, we did a night away, right? Was that the Montage last year?
Mm-hmm.
And we planned, and we like got these big sticky notes that you can get on Amazon. And we wrote out a ton of stuff that you want, that I want, that your business was going to do, that my business was going to do, that our family was going to do. Like, I think that was our 5 stickies. And then it all didn't work out.
Okay.
The way we intended.
Well, going backwards here, the reason that the time at Lynn and Jeff's conference room was so big for me was because this was something that we had refined every year. Like the first year in Moab, it was good, right? Like we just started talking, and there wasn't pressure on each other, but we made the effort, and we didn't know what to do. I mean, you just were taking the advice from Ricky of like, hey, just go sync up with your wife. And I think he actually did. Now that I think back of it, I think he did mention like, go on a little trip, go on a little weekend getaway or something. But I knew like then we were already going to Moab, and I thought, well, let's just do it then, and we'll have a sitter. And but we didn't know like what to do. Like we had never had those types of conversations. And so I feel like we just conversed to the level that we were comfortable with. Don't you?
Yeah.
So I just don't think that we were at a place that we knew how to have those bigger conversations. But the most important thing is we just started. We went forward at the level where we were at.
Yeah.
And then the following year, I know that we did go in a little bit more detail. And I actually think we were back at Moab again. And that's when we went to the Hoodoo. Because I do remember going to the Hoodoo with you as well.
Yeah.
And the conversation was bigger because, interestingly enough, my business had grown substantially that year. You had grown in your business and just yourself substantially. I feel like when I look back at some of our growth, I definitely see that you were the one charging forward and kind of like blazing this path and leaving. Like you never forced me along, but you definitely you definitely went forward on the growth path for yourself. And I think you just trusted and knew that in my time I would come. Like I would desire for the same things.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not trying to speak for you by any means, but
yeah, no, I mean, the interesting thing is I think back on the last, this is probably our 6th year of doing it, is we've gotten a little bit bigger. We've tried to get a little bit more expansive, especially the last couple of years. But like it's just kind of grown organically, and I think that's how a lot of stuff in life happens. And I think it's how you maybe evolved more into, not that you weren't not bought in before, but just buying in more at a different level, because like we now get here and you've planned everything. And like dinner last night, you planned this resort. I mean, you asked me what room I wanted and I picked one and you didn't go with it, which is okay. You went with one that was more expensive, which is good. But like that just goes to show like you've fully planned everything. Like for everyone listening, we're going to go and by the way, did we set this podcast up or did we just jump in and start talking about, we'll maybe have to record an intro.
I think we set it up.
Okay.
But we'll see.
Anyways, like you've taken the bull by the horns and just totally planned like A to Z everything, which is really cool for me to sit back and watch, because I think as you bet on yourself, and that can mean like you betting on your marriage, your spouse, your significant other, even by just showing them like, hey, I want to have this conversation with you. I think that goes a long way, because just thinking back on different things in our lives, not just necessarily like our little retreat we do either at the beginning or end of the year to plan the next calendar year. Like it's been really cool to see just both of our growth, but specifically like your growth in this, because I remember a point of time in our marriage when we weren't doing that great and you didn't really want to talk about this because other areas in our life weren't being fulfilled. Mm-hmm. And, you know, my heart goes out if anyone's in that place. It's a tough place to be, but just knowing that, like, I mean, it's only been six years that we started doing this. And like, I think each year that we do this, it sets up the next year for us. And, you know, last year's a testament to the fact that like it may not go exactly the way that you planned, every little detail, or nowhere close. Yet, like, I think it's still just the act of creation and getting together and being like, hey, what do we want next year to look like? And, you know, what do you want to accomplish? And what do I want to accomplish? And how can we both be there to help each other and hold space for each other to allow that person to grow? Because, I mean, the cool thing is when you grow, it kind of inadvertently pushes me to grow.
Yeah.
Right? And just thinking about everything we've got in store for this year, like I'm kind of at a loss. Like, not that I'm trying to compete or keep up or do anything, but I'm like, man, I kind of don't want to get left behind.
Like you'd get left behind. You're amazing.
I don't want to get forgotten.
Well, I want to speak to a couple of things that you said. So one, I actually think it's our 5th year doing this. If my memory is serving me well, I think it's actually our 5th.
Yeah,
I could be wrong, but I think it's our 5th. So here's where, like, here's just a thought that keeps coming back to me is one, when we have people ask about this, sometimes the initial, it can feel like really big and daunting. But again, we have grown to this level. Mm-hmm. If you and I had tried this at the very beginning, I don't know if it would have even worked. We weren't prepared to have certain conversations that we have now. I think it's just every year we've increased and we've gone bigger and we've gone deeper with each other because our skill levels in our own growth have gone to that level, right? And so I would say if you're listening to this and this is something that you're like, well, gosh, well, how would my spouse even go for that? Because that was me, right? I was the spouse that wasn't prepared and wasn't ready to go there. And Jordy was on a different level. And so he met me at my level, number one. We just started having the conversation. It was good to know where our goals were at. And I do remember one specific question we both asked each other in the very, very beginning of the year was, how can I support you with those goals? Mm-hmm. And that one question has carried with us throughout this whole journey and evolution of where we are now. And then the second thought I had, which goes on a whole other different swing here, was, you were talking about how we get together here and, and I appreciate everything, all the kind of things you said about my growth and just recognizing where we're at now with all of this. But when I think about some of the conversations that we have around all of this, something you said just last night has stuck with me. And that was, you had mentioned you're struggling a little bit with some of the areas that you want to focus in. Like, what do I want for myself? And we don't always have it all figured out. And we had a couple conversations last night. One of them was that just because we write it all out, no one's over here waiting to grade us, right? Like, no one's going to come over and say in 6 months from now or 1 year from now, like, you get a big fat F because you put that on the board, you put it on the sticky note, and you didn't make it happen. Mm-hmm. I mean, people could say that, right, about our last year's goals, because we put on a whole lot of things there, and we weren't anticipating the pregnancy, and we weren't anticipating a whole lot of other stuff that kind of came up. But what's really cool, and what you said last night that's just stuck with me, is that this has become such a special time for us just to slow down and connect with each other. Mm-hmm. And even naturally, the conversation evolves, and we're just able to get deeper with each other and connect with each other on a different level, because we don't have Noah and Brinley and Amelia's needs that always come first when we're with them. Yeah. They're not like right there at the forefront of our day and our minds, because we're removed from that for 24 hours. We're here, we're diving into each other, into our marriage, and into our family ultimately. And so it's just kind of stuck with me. There's a couple things we haven't even got to yet on our trip that normally we have already gotten to. Yeah. But I'm not feeling like this has been a waste. And I know we'll get to it, but the time connecting, I think, is really crucial, and it's setting us up for success for this year. Yeah. The other thought that has come to me, and we haven't planned it yet, but I think we need to. This was interesting. The last quarter of 2022 got really busy for both of us. Really, really busy. Very full, very fast. So I remember that in 2021, we had gone on this goal setting, vision casting retreat with each other at the Montage in November, December-ish, right? So we hadn't gone into the new year just yet, but we were getting there. And we didn't have that luxury this year, like to be able to do it earlier. And you and I kept trying to find a time, and it almost felt like this wasn't going to happen. But we were struggling because we knew how important it was to make sure that this time happened for us.
Yeah, well, I mean, I felt like I didn't even know it was going to happen next year, because our lives are getting a little bit more complex just as your business grows. And, my businesses are growing a little bit. But just like, then we've got trips, you've got trips, I've got trips, like work trips. And then we have family vacations that we want to do. And like in my mind, it's just been like, why? I don't know, like what can I plan on? Like we want to do Disney with the kids for 2 days. Like, I think that's all we can fit in just with everything else that's going on. And I've been like, I don't know what to plan. Like, and not that I'm like this big planner or anything, but it's always nice to know when you've got, a big family vacation, or, you've got a work trip coming up in a few weeks, and it's nice for me to know, hey, she's going to be gone during this time. And I'm sure it's nice for you to know, like, hey, this is when, Jordy's got strategic coach, and this is when
you got some campouts.
I've got campouts.
Yeah.
And it's just, yeah.
Well, and then the other thing that we've talked about is, even though we don't have it set in stone, like we've got a lot of white space on our calendar, we've expressed and we've communicated to each other in this time, what are we wanting for the year?
Yep.
Like, I've told you a couple things that I want to make sure happens for myself this coming year. And you've told me as well, there's some hunting trips you want to do. There is, there's some time that you would like to be spending camping or, connecting with some people from your different masterminds you're a part of. And I've expressed to you some things I want to go to, retreats or whatnot. And so although we don't have those dates and they're not put down, neither one of us are in the dark though.
Yeah, we kind of know about when they're going to happen.
Yeah. Well, and we also know it's a priority for each other.
Yep.
And I know going into this year, okay, this is a priority, but we've also had discussions of, okay, here's how my business is taking shape this year. This is the projection. This is the trajectory. I don't know all that's going to come in with that. And I've just been so in awe of you, of how you have shown up even to that conversation. And I mean, even you made a comment like, hey, if I need to take one step backwards in this area in order to support you to move forward with what you're doing, I'm willing to do that. And so again, we don't have it all mapped out. And I don't think we ever will. Like, I think we can plan and plan and plan. And life's always going to throw us curveballs, or life is always going to have its surprises or challenges that arise. But we both have a really good idea of what's most important to us. And we have a good idea of our goals. And this for me and we've said it, right? Leading up to this time together, we were both chomping at the bit to get together because we were feeling like we just want to get on the same page. I just want to have an uninterrupted conversation with you.
Yeah.
And know what do you want in this year? What do I want? I just want to talk to you. I just want to make sure we are in alignment. Do we even have any similar goals that bring us back to the same, wavelength? And in fact, we do, right?
Yep.
And so I want to talk a little bit for a second here. I know I'm bouncing all over the place, but why do we choose such expansive locations? Like, why can't we still just go to a conference room in Draper?
That's funny. I was just thinking about that because there's a hotel that's 2 minutes from our house. And I was just thinking through, like, if we didn't have as good of a year as we had this year financially, we could probably go to that hotel and, like, I think the experiences would be different. Like, we wouldn't be getting massages, but we could go sit in the hot tub and talk. And, what we do in this hotel room, like, we sit down, we have a year at a glance calendar, and we map out everything that's going on, like all the big rocks, if you will. And then we've got the big Post-its that we write down, kind of like what we are going after as far as goals or, just personal growth or whatever that might look like. We write that down on one of those, and we could totally do this. I mean, if we were doing it on a budget, we could do it for $200.
Yep.
You could do it for $2,000. You could do it for $5,000. Like, the budget, it doesn't really matter. For us, though, like, we even said this morning when we woke up, and as we're looking out right now, like, there's, we're in our room on the couch facing this massive wall it's a sliding glass window, basically, that will open up, I'm sure in the summer when it's not 18 degrees outside. But then there's the fireplace that's on, and then beyond the fireplace, it drops down into a little creek. And then there's, like, some little mini cabins. And then it goes, the mountain starts going up, and we can see that whole south side of the mountain, and there's scrub oak and
bright white, beautiful, fresh snow.
Beautiful snow. And just sitting here looking at this, like you even said, like, man, one day I want our house, our master bedroom, to have a view like this.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, that, the views has always been something that's important to us.
Yeah.
Because as we sit here and as we look at this, it's motivating for us. And it may not be like that for everyone, and that's okay. Like, find what works for you as a couple. But for us to remove ourselves, stick ourselves in a place that is outside of your norm, and, like, you might as well elevate yourself if you're going outside of your norm, because the more you can get around that, and I think the more you're exposed to that, the more you become like, oh no, I could totally do this, right? And just thinking, as our businesses have progressed and as, we've bought more real estate that's done well, we've bought a little bit bigger house, always within our means. Like we've always bought way under what we qualify for, right? Just because like we do still want to go have these experiences and we don't want to be housebroke. But I think that, just getting in an environment that you feel like, holy cow, this is awesome. Then I think your heart, your soul, your spirit, like you're just going to desire for more of that goodness because it's refreshing. It's like, it gives you energy. At least it gives us energy that, we can be in an environment like this, and man, how cool would it be to do this here once a quarter? Right. And as we were talking, I'm like genuinely curious, like, man, next year, are we going to do kind of the same? Cause this is pretty freaking awesome.
It really is.
Or like, are we going to try to find like that next level up, which there's always levels to everything. Oh, cool. Look at that woodpecker.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Right there on the wood. There's a woodpecker on the building. It's really cool. Anyways.
Well, and so where I'm at and why, so Jordy shared earlier that we were looking at this place. So let me just like take you guys down a quick history. And I know we have to wrap things up here shortly, but I want to share with you guys that when we were first booking this, like I said, we were behind the 8 ball. Like it didn't feel like this was going to happen to the degree we wanted to, because we just hadn't been good at planning. And lesson learned, right? Like it is going to be planned on this calendar before we leave this this sacred time with each other of when we're going to have this again in 2023. But we were behind the 8 ball. And so I had found there was a Hyatt Regency in Salt Lake City and it looked really pretty, but then I didn't like that it didn't have a spa and we'd have to run over to the Grand America to have the spa experience, because we both really enjoy that. We like kind of giving back to our bodies that way. So then we were like, well, let's just go stay at the Grand America anyways. And it's just all right there. Well, here's a funny story. And this is no offense to anyone who loves the Grand America rooms. They don't do it for me. I don't love the French decor. I'm not into the pink. I love everything else about that hotel.
Yeah.
Everything except for those dang rooms. I just don't love the rooms. So we had already agreed, by the way, it was already settled that we were going to do the Grand America. I was going to book a few certain things. We were planning on going on a hike. We had some things that were planned that day and for that time. And something was not sitting well with me. I wasn't excited about it. It wasn't getting me dreamy. I knew it was not the right thing. And so the reason we hadn't gone back to the Montage, or we looked at the St. Regis, we looked at Stein Eriksen, there was nothing. It was the only thing available during this weekend were these 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom houses, and it was definitely not in the budget. $9,000 a night for these 4-bedroom condos, if you will, at the Stein Eriksen. And I was like, number one, we don't need the space. And 2, no, the budget is not supporting that. So I just saw out one more time, and I have no idea why this place never popped up on the search before, but it finally did. And I remember looking at the pictures, and I decided on this room because, again, when I saw this, it was like, no, it's worth the extra. It was $250 difference between this room and another room, and it was 110% worth it for me to get the experience, and that was important. When we got to the resort, when we walked in, just the high level of experience that we have received here, it really has been elevated even from our time at the Montage.
Yeah.
And again, it's to be totally honest, and you can believe us or not, it's not about like the material stuff. It's not about that. We were actually listening to a podcast, and I remember him talking about how he is on, it was Matty A. He's on a really expansive trip right now in Florida. And he was like, look, we're going to enjoy it. This is definitely an incredible time. But when I'm done and we are back, like it's back to the grind. It's back to this. And that resonated with me so much because right now, right here, this is a time that I've pushed everything else aside, walking into this space, looking out at this incredible view, walking through the restaurant, the lobby, the gym, the grounds area. We have slowed down. We've reflected. We're dreaming bigger. We're vision casting for ourselves. We're saying, okay, in 5 years, where do we want to be? It's just opening up our minds on such a different level. And we're achieving exactly what we came here for.
Mm-hmm.
We're also connecting in a way that we don't get to very often. And so it's serving its purpose for me. It's allowing me to dream. And we're walking into a really busy and really, it's an expansive season. It really is going to be. And so taking this time, it's actually allowing me to become revitalized. It's allowing me to be re-energized and knowing that I'm going to be filling my cup to be able to fill our marriage cup so that we can go out and we can absolutely kill it for our marriage, first and foremost, for our family, for our children, and then for the people that God brings into our life.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So overall, for me, this planning event, staycation, retreat, whatever you want to call it, one, I feel expanded, which is the purpose of it. Two, I feel like I've got a better grasp at what you're doing this year with your business. And, we said it before, but there was some white space left and we'll figure it out along the way. But I at least kind of know the direction your ship is heading. And the third takeaway is like, I truly feel like we did a couple of different things that really, like, I feel rejuvenated. And, the massage, we drove around in a little side-by-side and looked at a couple yurts. And just taking time, like my juices started flowing. My mind started thinking, and I didn't realize I was maybe in a little bit of a rut. And I didn't tell you that before, but that might have come from my lack of maybe a little bit of lack of direction or oomph or whatever you want to call it. But I'm grateful and glad. Those are kind of my three big things. And, to anyone out there listening, I know that you're going to give your three things that you took away from this weekend for the listeners too. But if you're listening to this, and this doesn't necessarily have to be like at the beginning of the year. So if you're hearing this in May, just plan it. Like you could do this twice a year. You could do this once a quarter. The important thing is, especially if you have kids, I think if you have young kids, it's probably more important, but really for anyone, just having direction as you go through your year and having goals and having where you want to get to. Because I think in this world that we all live in now in 2023, it's, there's Instagram, there's Facebook, there's Twitter, there's the internet, there's whatever else. And I'm guilty of this, and we all just end up like comparing our inner world to everyone else's outer world that they post online.
Yeah, that's
and
such
then
a good way to put it.
And then the problem is like we're comparing our blooper reel to everyone else's highlight reel,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then we're like, well, I'll never get this because I'm not this person. And well, if you keep telling yourself that, it's going to come true,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I feel like this exercise that we do, anyone can do it, and I think they should. And if you're listening to this, send this to your spouse. Send this to someone that that them and their spouse would benefit from it. But really, like it sets up the next
9 to 12 months.
Well, I want to add to that for a second, and this is kind of one of my takeaways, but one thing that is really showing up for me, and I know you mentioned, for you, it's great because you have an idea of a direction of where I'm headed with, my business and that, but outside of that, so, anyone listening that, you don't own a business, or whether you're a stay-at-home mom or your lifestyle looks a little bit different, I still think that this is so powerful because one, when we look at a year and everything that can happen in 1 year, it's so easy to fall out of alignment if you're not being purposeful about putting yourselves back into alignment and your marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you were talking there, it was near your last takeaway about how you just feel like you were in a rut and you really needed this, and you kind of expanded upon that. What was going through my mind when you were talking about that was just how important and how crucial it is for us, you and I, and in marriages in general, to get together and make sure you're staying in alignment. I'm speaking from my own experience, but also from conversations I've had with dear friends. You're going along, you listen to a podcast, you read a book, you have an interaction, you have a life-altering experience, and something in you changes, right? Well, are you going back to your partner and communicating that? Are you finding time to make sure that there is space allowed for you guys to have that conversation, to say, hey, here's some things showing up for me right now? And, it's funny because as we've been touring this place and experiencing a fraction of what they actually have to offer here, just due to the limited time we're here, we've been exploring part of it for another purpose, which is the couples mastermind we're doing. And one thing that is coming up for me is that's one reason I've loved our couples mastermind is, number one, we had the 2 dedicated trips that were basically non-negotiable. Like we wouldn't have joined if we couldn't do the trips, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they were set aside for us. And it allowed us.
It's a big reason that the cost was so high.
Yeah, the investment.
They were like the trips were.
They're out of this world.
Crazy.
Yeah, they left us again dreaming bigger. Like I know our first trip with the couples mastermind when we went to Mexico. I remember telling you, and I brought it up again on this exact weekend, just this morning at breakfast, that when I come to places like this, it gets me thinking, how can we structure, what can we do in our lives so that we could possibly take our entire extended family on something like this? Mm-hmm. How could we gift that to our whole family? Well, that's going to make me think differently in business. It's going to make me think differently as I'm, one of my focuses this year is to be a good steward of our money and wealth. I really want to stretch that knowledge. I really want to be someone who I can look at amount of money coming in, and I want to be strategic with where it goes out. Where am I putting that money? And that's a tangent there. But back to what I was saying, and one of my going into my takeaways is I feel so much more connected to you, especially near the end of this year. There's been so much going on, and we had that couples connection weekend. And, I kept telling you, I didn't realize how bad we needed that. That time was set aside. We had different conversations. And I want to speak to something really fast. Everyone knows on this podcast already, I'm pretty tangent-y. If you didn't, now you know. But when you were talking about staring out in and just looking at this and how we've talked about views, we did an exercise in Texas where we were thinking, and we had to think, it was our 50-year wedding anniversary that we were celebrating. And Kara guided us through that meditation, and she was asking very detailed questions, which got our minds thinking in detail. And I remember telling you in detail, we would be living somewhere that had spectacular views. We were definitely surrounded by nature, mountains, big, gorgeous trees. And so this right here is just bringing up so much of that memory for me. But
wait, are you saying you want to buy this resort?
Yes. So, yes, I would love to buy this resort.
All right. Well, we need
We need to meet
pennies
Mike
more.
and Barb Phillips. If anyone out there knows Mike and Barb Phillips, send them our way. We want to chat. Anyways, we want to connect with them. So a couple of my takeaways, I feel so connected with you. I feel reminded of the team that we are. I feel comforted knowing that I have you in my corner with what we're about to walk into. This has been hard. It's anytime I leave our kids, whether it's 24 hours, 48, 72, we talk about them, we think about them. I'm looking at pictures of them.
We're looking at kids at the table next to us at dinner, and we're like, oh, look at that. That kid's Noah's age, and he's so cute.
And if Noah were here, he'd climb up these curtains right here. Yeah. It's not easy for me to pull myself away from our kids like that and be here, especially with a little infant like that, right? We do have a fantastic sitter who just loves on our kids, and we feel very secure with that. But I needed this time. I feel like we go back. We're also, we talked about this, but we're going to have an 8-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old this year. And Brinley's entering in to a new stage, and we're having different conversations with her. I feel like you and I are going to be on the same page. I feel like we're a team as we're walking into these different stages of parenthood, and knowing how we want to show up for our kids, the type of people we want to be, the conversations Noah forces us to have with each other of, because he is really, really special, and he is absolutely here to teach us something through the chaos, through the wild. He is here to teach us a lot. And I feel like Amelia just ties us all together, and she is definitely a glue between her siblings already. So another one of my takeaways is that it isn't about the material. It isn't about these experiences. They are expansive. They're not something that we can do on the regular, but it reminds me to slow down. It reminds me that peppered throughout the year, can I make sure that I'm fitting in, a day at the spa? How can I be putting myself more in nature? Because every time we immerse ourselves in this type of scenery, I crave it more. And I'm like, man, why isn't this a part of our life in a bigger way? And so I feel more focused. I feel like I have clarity of some things that I absolutely want to make non-negotiables for our marriage and for our family and our children. And like you, I told you at the beginning, there's been a couple areas that I'm struggling to really tell you exactly what I see for myself. And that's different this year for me. Last year, I felt like I could write down 10 to 20 things in each category that we honed in on. And this year it's different, and I'm okay with that, and I welcome it. And the one last thing I'm going to add is I loved your suggestion that whenever this episode does find you, it could be the middle of the year, take that time, invest in your marriage, invest in that time to be together, surround yourself with people who are talking and having different conversations, because it really will expand you, and it will allow you to tap into that version of yourself that's waiting to come out. So thank you for sitting down with me and having this conversation. I appreciate also your willingness to go with my plans. You also were so gracious and sweet to say and recognize just the effort that I put in, because this year I definitely took more of that lead role of planning it, and I absolutely enjoyed it. And this was exactly what I needed. And I just appreciate that you fully showed up to the experience as well. Like, you didn't hold yourself back. You've had the conversations with me that I wanted to have. And the experience of bathing in a creek, pretty much. That's a side note. We
No. They don't want to hear about it. You guys are going to save you.
You can DM me if you want to hear that fun story. Anyways, thank you. You show up in such a big way in my life. You're my best friend. I'm so grateful to be doing this life with you. And
thank you. You're going to make me cry.
Well, don't cry.
I feel the same way.
All right. Well, with that, you guys, thank you for tuning in, and please hit that subscribe button and follow along. Connect with me on social media. Can't wait to continue to chat. By the way, my husband has a fantastic podcast all centered around investing and real estate and just being a really good man and a good person. So definitely look him up, and we can't wait to connect with you guys. And if you are at all interested in the couples mastermind that we will be hosting this year, reach out. It's going to be absolutely incredible. And it kicks off in February. So let us know. We'd love to chat with you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of The Financially Free Investor. If you found value in this episode or know someone who would find value in this information, please share with them, subscribe, and send us a review.